Well, we pretend we've got swords, and we make the noise of the swords fighting, and when somebody stabs us, we go, ah! In the winter, if you lived in the country, well, it was just all wet, and there wouldn't be anything for miles around, and if you get soaked if you tried to go out, and there's no shelter anywhere except in your own house. But in the town you can go out on wet wintry days because you can always find somewhere to shelter because there's lots of places. When I go home, I come in and Mummy gives me a cup of tea, and then I go out and play, and when it starts to get dark I come in again and put on TV. Well, I'm going to take people to the country and sometimes take them to the seaside, and I'll have a big loud speaker in the motor coach and tell them whereabouts we are and what we're going to do and what the name of the road is and all about that. When I get married, I don't want to have any children because they're always doing naughty things and making the whole house untidy.
And then I moved up to a comprehensive school. I found it much bigger, of course, and I found it hard to settle into at first. But now I've been here a few years, I know my way around, and it's a very good idea to have competition. Otherwise you might start to relax, really, and not so try hard enough. I think if you're healthy and have good friends, you can get on perfectly well. But everybody would like to be rich. Being in set one, it's very, very hard to keep up with the leaders. I never have a time to relax at all.
Tell me about the period in your life when you went to university and what happened.
It was a very short period. I was only at university. Well, I was only taking university seriously for a matter of a couple of months, 2 or 3 months. Maybe I went to the wrong university, or maybe university life didn't suit me. Either way, I did make an application to Oxford, but I didn't get in. And well, I think that's in the past now, and I don't know whether I would have been any happier at Oxford. It always had been a dream to get into Oxford, I think, because people had encouraged me and because I knew famous people having been to Oxford, and I'd read memoirs written by famous people, things such as Brideshead Revisited, which was a great favourite. But these, I suppose, are, well, they were dreams of which I had while I was at school, and I have to just get over the fact that I didn't get into Oxford, probably because I didn't approach the thing in the right way.
Are you bitter about it?
I was very, very bitter at the time. Maybe I still am, but I tried to get over it. I came to London and I contacted an agency for squatters, and they were able to give me the address of somebody who was able to help people who were looking for accommodation in the London area. And by the process of chasing people around, I eventually managed to find this place here. I wouldn't squat in a place which I knew to be owned by somebody else. I wouldn't, certainly, because I know if I had a place of my own and found somebody squatting in it, I'd be disgusted. But this place was empty, and I was simply offered a place to live here and was very grateful for it. And I think in questions of squatting, a bit of humanity is more important than vague rules about who can live where. I've got my own room. I can cook whenever I like. I haven't got a landlady to tell me what time to come in. I've got my own front door key. And to tell the truth, it's a lot better than a lot of accommodation I've had over the last 18 months or so. It could be a bit warmer. It's a bit chilly. But it's perfectly satisfactory for the time being.
What sort of influence did your parents have on you?
Well, they made me believe in God from the start, which I certainly wouldn't, I don't know even now whether I do believe in God or not. I've thought an awful lot about it, actually, and I still don't know. But still, this was absolutely certain. If one was to survive in the world, one had to believe in God. This was something which was taught to me. Always think of other people first before yourself, to a ridiculous, neurotic degree, which I think affected me.
What do you mean by that?
Well, this is, I suppose, is basic Christianity. The sort of if somebody slaps you on one cheek, let them do it on the other. Almost literally taken, which gave me a few shocks when I tried to put it into practice.
In what way?
I don't think, well, to be honest, to go back to that question, I don't think I was really taught any sort of policy of living at all by my parents. This is probably their biggest mistake. That I was just left to fend for myself in a world which they seemed completely oblivious of. And I found that even when I tried to discuss problems which were facing me in school, my parents didn't seem to be aware of the nature of the problem.
Were they ambitious for you?
Yeah, but along set lines which they had planned. I think they've often said to me that they had seen me even from when I was very young in a certain type of career, and possibly they'd never even thought that anything else was vaguely possible. They probably imagined I would be maybe a university lecturer or a bank manager or something like this. Some kind of indoor work which involved writing and reading and this sort of thing, because they didn't take account of the other side of my personality. But
And what sort
I don't know
of
I wonder how many parents really think of their children as individual human beings.
What are your feelings about them now, your parents?
I'm glad they're there, because if I ever become homeless, I will be able to go back and live with them. They wouldn't object to this. I'm capable of getting on with my parents perfectly well if they are willing to let me live as another adult in their house, and appreciate that I'm living my own way of life, and that I am living there because I can't think of anything else to do with myself.
I mean, what do they think of what you're doing now?
They accept it. I think now they do accept the type of person I am, and they see this as just as simply my attempting to add more experience to my life, which satisfies me.
Are they worried about you?
Probably, yes. But no more worried now than they were when I first left the university. That was probably the time at which they were most worried. And we have in fact managed to discuss a lot of personal things which I felt at one time I'd never be able to discuss. And therefore, as I say, it is possible for me to live for a few weeks, even for a month or so at home without there being too much friction.
What goes through your mind when you look at saw those two films when you were at 7, Bright and Perky and...
I find it hard to believe that I was ever like that, but there's the evidence. I wonder why I was like that. I wonder what it was inside me that made me like that. And I can see even at 14 that I was beginning to get more subdued, and I was putting a lot more thought into what I was saying, to a ridiculous degree. And probably when I was 7, I don't know, I lived in a wonderful world where everything was sensation and I could be happy like this, or I could be miserable the next minute. And I didn't have to plan for the future. I didn't have to worry about having friends and all this sort of thing, because everything was so mapped out for me. I don't know what sort of stumbling blocks should be put in a child's way to get him used to living in the outside world. Because I think maybe this is something that was wrong in my upbringing. I didn't have enough obstacles to get over, to toughen myself up against. I was unprepared for things as they were, but looking back, even now, I couldn't think of what might have been done, and I certainly wouldn't start writing educational theory about this, because I know how personal a thing it is, and it probably wouldn't work in anybody else's case.
Would you like to be 7 again?
No, because I know that I had to be 21 again. Yes, at that age I was very conscious of having to struggle, because I suppose what parents and teachers were saying. Well, they said, you've got a brain, you must put all your effort into schoolwork. Well, what else could they have said? I would have probably been just as angry, looking back, if they'd never encouraged my intellectual efforts at all.
When I get married, I don't want to have any children, because They are always doing naughty things and making the whole house untidy.
Do you have any great ambition, any dream?
I suppose yes, well, I would like to be somebody in a position of importance, and I've always thought this. But I don't think I'm the right sort of person to carry the responsibility for whatever it is. I always thought, well, I'd love to be, possibly even love to be in politics.
Do you and Peter have the same values?
I think we both value happiness and stability. I think most people do.
But you've kicked against the stability that's...
I don't think I ever had any stability, to be quite honest. I can't think of any time in my life when I ever did. I don't think I've been kicking against anything. I think I've been kicking in mid-air the whole of my life. Simply to be able to wake up in the morning and feel that this day was going to be worthwhile. Which is what I don't feel at the moment. Last 3 years I have in fact been unemployed, but travelling quite a bit, mostly in Britain, been abroad once or twice, but not as extensively as I used to do.
Thanks. Shall I put the luggage in here, or do you want it in the back?
I live off money from Social Security, which does me for my rent and my food. I've been moving about a bit between different places, really. I'm a bit unsettled, but I'm very shortly moving to live in digs.
For the last 7 years, Neil has been moving around Britain. He spent the summer on a farm in North Wales, and when we found him, he had just arrived in the Western Highlands of Scotland.
And do you think people like you who live off the state are scrounging?
No. If the state didn't give us any money, it would probably just mean crime. And I'm glad I don't have to steal to keep myself alive. I do it simply because I don't want to be without any money at all. If the money runs out, well, then for a few days there's nowhere to go to. And that's all you can do. I simply have to find the warmest shed I can find.
Neil rents whatever kind of home he can find.
The last job I had was cooking in a youth hostel. Some cleaning work as well. And I was the only person in the hostel who could speak French, so I had to do a bit of that.
Do you eat every day?
Yes. I'm eating better now than I was at times when I was in Aberdeen, and those days, sometimes I really was short of food. But there's a lot more to do in the mountains than there would be in a suburb or in a city centre. What I've found here, in fact, is that you don't talk about things like the weather, because the weather is all around. Everybody knows it's been raining, so you don't talk about the weather. That makes good sense to me. I'm not the sort of person who can go into a pub, sit down with a drink, and listen to the jukebox and talk a lot of rubbish. A lot of people find that very relaxing. But if I'm going to talk to somebody, A, I have to be able to hear myself speaking, and B, I have to be talking about something that actually has a meaning. I'm not trying to denigrate the way that most people relax, but I can't do that. So I'm lost in a noisy pub. I'll sit in a quiet corner of a quiet pub, and then I'll want to talk about literature or something like that, which not everybody will want to.
How do people regard you here?
Well, I'm still known as an eccentric, as I have been since about the age of 16 or so.
Do the days seem long for you?
They can do. Grew up against a background of people of pretty average intelligence. I don't think I went to a school that was full of bright people. If this had been the case, I don't think I would have been so big-headed. I know I went to university expecting to be something of a genius and found that this wasn't the case at all. Which is a good thing for me. I mean, it's very good that I didn't come to that opinion. I don't think I was so much clever. I just think I was quite enthusiastic, particularly when it came to A-levels. I was enthusiastic about the subjects I was studying, and therefore, with the help of good teaching, I
I was able to get good results.
What were your results?
Well, I did well enough. I'm not going to boast.
Well, but tell me the fact. Well, how many O-levels and how many A-levels did you get?
Well, I got 10 O-levels and then I got 4 A-levels.
And did you get good grades within them?
Yes, the grades were quite satisfactory. No formal education can prepare anybody for life. Just only life can prepare you for what comes. And sooner or later, you're going to have to cross certain barriers. And I don't think you ever cross those at school or at university. You come across the problem of mixing with other people, but the real problem, the real problem of becoming a success in the world is one you have to tackle yourself. I still set myself high standards if I'm doing something I want to do. But that's important. That's not too bad a thing.
But you talked also about not having enough obstacles in your life. How do you feel about that now?
It's funny that, isn't it? I can't remember saying that, but now I do remember, and it seems that the whole situation is reversed.
In what way?
Well, now I'm a free. I've got a free hand, but I've got nothing to do with myself. So, great, thanks. I just needed just a nice woolly pair, couldn't I? Yeah. Great.
What other things about modern society turn you off?
The cheap satisfaction in so many things, the aimlessness, but I think the total lack of thought is at the bottom of it. Nobody seems to know where they or anybody else is going, and nobody seems to worry. You know, you finish the week, you come home, you plug into the TV set for the weekend, and then you manage to get back to work on Monday. And it seems to me that this is just a slow path to total brainwashing. And if you have a brainwashed society, then you're heading towards doom. There's no question about that.
It would be pretty tough to convince most people that what you have here, the way you live, the way you look, is better than a suburban life.
Well, I don't want to convince anybody. I know it is. See, what I look like isn't necessarily what I feel like. I'm not claiming that I feel as though I'm in some sort of nirvana, but I'm claiming that if I was living in a bedsit in suburbia, I'd be so miserable, I'd feel like cutting my throat. And so there is a slight difference. We made up quite well after the bad times we went through when I was in my early 20s. There are still awkward patches, but I think suddenly, it perhaps almost mutually, it dawned upon us that we were all making mistakes, and also that some of the things we did couldn't be helped. And I think now, perhaps the greatest thing we've achieved is we know when to say nothing, and we know when to do nothing, and we know when to be tolerant of each other, and that's a great thing. That's really tremendous. What I'd like most of all would be to be able to do something for my parents when they're older, to be there when the time is necessary.
Were they upset with what you said about them in the last programme?
I'm sure they were. But I don't wish I hadn't said it, because I said exactly what was going through my mind. I think I was very venomous, and I think had I been in an easier situation myself, and had I had less worries myself at the time, I would have been perhaps a little kinder. And I had to take out my anger on somebody, and I think it came out of my parents. But perhaps unconsciously, a lot of what I said was what I did feel underneath. But I don't want the scar to remain. I always told myself that I would never have children.
Why?
Because children inherit something from their parents, and even if my wife were the most high-spirited and ordinary and normal of people, the child would still stand a very fair chance of being not totally full of happiness because of what he or she will have inherited from me. I don't think of God as a creature, but I think of something, time, destiny, which is regulating everybody's affairs, and which you cannot fight against and you cannot order about.
And how's he been treating you?
Well, I said to somebody last week that I preferred the Old Testament to the New Testament, because in the Old Testament, God is very unpredictable. And that's, I think, how I've seen him in my life. Sometimes very benevolent, sometimes seemingly needlessly unkind. I don't see any way out. I've thought of everything I possibly could. It seemed to me for a long time that getting a reliable job and a nice place to live would be the solution. Well, I haven't succeeded. I can't see any immediate future at all. But here I am. I've still got clothes on my back, not particularly nice clothes, but I've still got them. I have a place to go to. I have some prospects of work. I'm still applying for jobs. I haven't given up. I think I'm lucky because I've met so many people. I've worked with people who have no future whatsoever, for whom life is finished completely at 50, and yet they still have to somehow keep going. And I don't want it to seem that I'm complaining too much. I feel, especially sometimes when I'm on my own, that I'm losing touch with the way other people live.
Do you worry about your sanity?
Other people sometimes worry about it.
Like who?
As I said, I sometimes can be found behaving in an erratic fashion. I sometimes get very frustrated, very angry, for no apparent reason, for a reason which won't be apparent to other people around me. It's happened from time to time.
Have you had treatment?
I've occasionally had to see doctors, yes. I haven't had any treatment.
And what have they said to you?
I've had a lot of advice, but you know, the best medicine is kind words, and it usually comes from somebody who has nothing to do with the medical profession. Which isn't to say that doctors can't be very helpful. But really, the thing a sick person wants is to be away from doctors as soon as possible.
What did they say was wrong with you?
Well, I have always had a nervous complaint. I had it since I was 16. It was responsible for my leaving university and for some of my difficulties with work. But as you know, you can't afford to go around looking depressed. That in itself is bad enough.
So can you lick it?
It remains to be seen. All the things I always thought I could do. I could give lectures on erudite subjects that I'd read all about, or I could work in the theatre, perhaps lighting or directing a show.
And is all that lost to you?
Does seem to be, yes.
At 35, he's living in a council flat in the Shetland Islands.
The nice thing about here is that you can cut yourself off when you want, because there are people living around, but they're pretty quiet people. It's an environment which sustains me. It's one in which I can survive. I still feel my real place is in the world of, or the world where people are doing what the majority of people do. And the reason I don't feel safe is because I think I'm getting more and more used to this lifestyle, which eventually I shall have to give up.
How do you manage for money these days?
Social Security, still. I wish it wasn't, but I'm afraid it is. Well, I've no desire to be putting the taxes up and drawing money off people who've earned it themselves. But that's the way it is.
Neil settled down in the Shetland Islands a couple of years ago.
Hello, Neil. How are you?
Is this community important to you?
Yes, it has to be. This is where I live. It's been very good to me. People have been especially kind in many areas, and I'd like to be putting something back into it, and we'd be putting something back into the whole of Shetland, not just into this area. I'll take 2 pints of milk, please.
There we are, Neil. And how's the pantomime then?
Not so bad.
Oh, that's good. No traumas.
It's not on my part. There's a few people could do with learning their lines a bit better.
But you're all right.
Well, I shouldn't speak to.
The Village Pantomime, 1990. Beauty and the Beast.
Matthew! Your house, sir, is needing maybe some repairs. I think the attendance at last year's pantomime on the Saturday night was the biggest crowd of West of Shetland folk I've ever seen in one place. And, you know, we're pleased with that, and we think they enjoyed it. We've had good receptions in other parts of Shetland as well. We did tour one play. I think we're moving into an age when there's going to be more stress on the community. When bigger policies are fairly set, are fairly predictable, and the emphasis is going to fall on local organisation.
You directed it last year and you're not this year. Why is that?
Well, the specific reason is that we had a preliminary meeting, and my name was not put forward as the one they wanted. So,
why would that be?
Probably because I like to do things in my own way. I'm perhaps quite an authoritative director. I have my own idea of the performance before we even start. And I don't like people to deviate from that. And during the course of the production, of course, people come along with suggestions. No, I accept suggestions. I don't just go along without listening to people. But I know how I want the thing. And once I deviate once from that idea, the whole thing actually falls apart. It's not a work of art anymore. I'm not claiming that I've produced marvellous works of art, but I do know what I'm aiming for.
Alas, poor master, still sleeping. Shall I awaken him?
I think everybody wants to be somebody, and when you can't actually be anything in your ordinary life, if you feel there's a sphere in which you can excel, then it's great. I mean, I know how much pleasure people who take photographs get when their work is praised, and that's, you know, perhaps it's much the same thing.
You're just having a quick look at your plan here, as it stands.
What I have done, I've taken lists of all the community halls in Shetland with their capacity.
Neil is trying to organise a professional touring theatre company.
If a hall only seats 60 people, it may not be worth putting on a show there.
So, I mean, what was your response then to the fact that only 4 folk turned up at the...
I was very disappointed. I was disappointed, but I think it proves the point that I've been trying to make, that you can't just expect people to turn up for a group from outside Shetland when they don't know what the thing's about. I've had an instinctive feeling that I was a writer since I was 16 and never really wanted to be anything else. I would actually pay to have something published, because I think that's important. I think I could find somebody who would recognise something. There must be something in what I've done. I don't think it's all useless. I probably am overvaluing it, but I know how much effort went into some of it, and on that strength alone, I just can't believe it's useless. With each successive play, I don't know who I'm trying to speak to and what I'm trying to say to them, whether they're listening. I just keep going because that's what I feel I should be doing.
Well, it weren't too bad last night anyway.
It was better than it's been for a while, I think.
There was enormous reaction to you in the previous film. What did people see in you, do you think?
It seemed that I was representing some kind of successful escapism, or somebody who'd managed to be totally himself, hadn't given in to pressure of society to conform. And people flooded me with letters, and people seemed to think I could solve their personal problems. And I was quite frightened because I knew I couldn't. But what really bothered me was people seemed to see something in me that I hadn't been aware of myself. All I was aware of was that I didn't have anywhere to go, I had nothing to do, I had no money. I felt let down by quite a lot of people. I didn't think my life was a success, but suddenly everybody seemed to think so. But the most nagging thing was that whatever, even if 1 million people had written to me, it wouldn't have made any difference to my own situation. Well, how shall we say? All but, you know. I mean, there's always, every unmarried man, and I suppose every unmarried woman hopes for somebody who will actually come along to change their life. But the practical reality is the chances of my finding somebody who would put up with me in my integrity are few. So,
what would you look for in a woman?
Well, I might look for various things, but what's probably more important is what somebody would look for in me. I can't offer reliability. I mean, I think most women looking for a husband or a steady man want somebody who is reliable in some way or other. Well, I cannot offer that, because I don't know what I'm going to be like from one day to the other, and it would be foolish of me pretending that, you know, that I could offer something like that. I can offer sincerity. I can offer compassion, willingness to do my part, to put my wife's interest as high as my own. No doubt I'm sure these are important, but I cannot say, look, you know, in 10 years' time, I'll still be bringing a wage in, especially if I don't start in that situation.
Are you getting better or worse, do you think, your states?
I don't think there's any significant change in the sort of... I said I haven't been so depressed since I've been in Shetland. I suppose my basic personality is not a lot different.
Are you having any medical treatment for your mood changes? And your...
No, I haven't for many years, because I wouldn't like to be dependent upon man-made substances for the cure.
Do you ever think you're going mad?
Oh, I don't think it, I know it. Well, because we're not allowed to use the word mad, but you know, I think most people are mad here, really. But then I think it's a mad world. I think, I mean, I remember working in London 12 years ago, and just walking through the city, and they were digging up the drains, and there were cranes knocking down buildings, and there were cars trying to get down impossible narrow alleys and having to reverse out again, and policemen doing all kinds of things. And I thought, this world is just mad, you know, this world is just mad. Well, after I tried every remedy one could possibly think of for my personality disorders, I thought, well, I'm going to trust God, because other people have done so, seemingly with positive results. I can't say the moment I trusted God, my life was fine. And I can't say all the time that I think I found the answer. But I can say with some certainty that once I started believing that there is actually a God who has something of a design for the world, who is working in a certain way in the world, after that, some things became clear to me. I really can't say much more than that.
So do you think you have failed?
Can't really judge.
Do you feel you failed yourself?
Well, my life isn't over.
Can you think what you'd like to be doing in the year 2000?
I can think of all kinds of things I'd like to be doing. The real question is what am I likely to be doing?
What are you likely to be doing?
And that's a horrible question. I tend to think the most likely answer is that I'll be wandering homeless around the streets of London. But with a bit of luck, that would happen. Some of the considerable disadvantages that residents of the Trowbridge Estate area have in comparison with those in other parts of Hackney. I think that the time between my moving to London from Shetland and actually finding my own accommodation in London must have been around about 2 months. And all that time I stayed with Bruce.
And was that difficult?
Not at all. No, he was a model host. Although he did always insist on measuring the amount of bath water there was in the bath. I'm not quite sure why that was. I never actually found out.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you know, like he'd find the fridge a bit noisy, so he'd turn it off. Or if I had to hoover, he'd walk round the block. Or
well, I didn't stay in and shout.
No, that's true.
That was the thing. No, I accept that I wasn't the model logic in every way. And however, that only emphasises how patient you actually were.
How has Bruce helped you?
Well, he's just been a good, loyal friend. I suppose yes, well, I would like to be somebody in a position of importance, and I've always thought this. But I don't think I'm the right sort of person to carry the responsibility for whatever it is. I always thought, well, I'd love to be, possibly even love to be in politics.
First of all, they are geographically isolated. They're separated from most of Hackney by...
At 42, he's a Liberal Democrat member of Hackney Council. He was elected 2 years ago.
While I was in Shetland, I felt very strongly that I should become involved in politics, simply because I felt I was not achieving anything in the ways I really wanted to. And I could see decisions being made politically by people I felt were not competent to make them, and who I felt were not representing the majority of the public. And I felt angry. I thought, in my own small way, I've got to get in there. And I think more people should. I think it's only apathy which leads to bad government at any level.
It's like a million miles away from the Shetlands here. How have you coped with that?
That is one aspect of it, and certainly adjusting to London after all that period away, even though I'd been back occasionally for visits, was extremely difficult, and it became progressively easier. The first 6 hours were an absolute nightmare, and then the first week was pretty bad, and I suppose it took me a year or so to adjust. The question of long-term sick leave delegation, as you'll be aware, Chair, the Liberal Democrats oppose...
Do you have any nerves when you stand up and give speeches or make arguments or defend positions?
Yes, of course. And if I didn't, it would be wrong. And the councillor who has no nerves is not doing his job. It becomes slightly easier after the first time. And I'm glad you didn't record my first speech, because most of the chamber walked out. And I determined, like Disraeli, to say something like, well, you're not listening now, but one day you will hear me. But unfortunately, most of the chamber had already walked out, so it was hardly worth saying that. And also, I don't believe that will necessarily be the case. I've trained to be a teacher of English as a foreign language, been on a number of training courses. I've done an Open University degree, that was perhaps the longest of all. It was an Open University BA. I took a number of subjects. This is all background, I suppose, and really, perhaps you'd like to know whether I've done any work, and the answer is no.
Another one.
There we are. Oh, there'll be plenty in the next few weeks, I think.
I know more about...
All Neil's political work is voluntary, like the canvassing he did for the Liberal Democrats at last year's Winchester by-election. He lives entirely on state benefit.
I haven't had any paid work apart from a couple of interim government schemes. I worked in a local community theatre for about 6 months. I worked as a gardener, fairly inevitably.
Does it worry you living off benefits, living off the state?
Yeah, of course. I feel as I'm a drain on people who are working hard to provide the money. It's not that I don't think there should be a benefit service. I think there should be work for all, or for as many as want to do it. And I'm not satisfied with efforts that have been made to provide work for those who want it. Well, I'm not married. I value all experience, and I feel as part of my life hasn't happened. I'm not homosexual, therefore I do hanker after a stable relationship with a woman. I've never been able to achieve that, and I think I'm somehow deficient in my ability to react to certain of the needs of others through not having had that relationship. My health's been a lot better more recently than at other times in my life. Maybe being busy has been part of the cure. And I think my Christian faith has helped me.
Can I just say, Neil, many thanks for the prayers. They were really nice. They were thoughtful.
I also believe that as my friends who've been so loyal have
got to know me better and better, and there's always room for getting to know people better, that they themselves have been able to show support and sympathy in the most appropriate ways.
Is this a good time in your life?
Yes, probably. I've never been busier, and never been in contact with so many people.
Now, the one thing I do have to say is, please put all the leaflets right through the letterboxes.
Yep. I feel incredibly grateful for the opportunity to do what I'm doing. I'm grateful to the people who elected me. I hope I haven't let them down. I hope I will be re-elected. I mean, that depends upon my performance in the last 2 years.
In May, he was re-elected for another term.
I don't think there's a councillor in the country who wouldn't like to see themselves as an MP. And indeed, they say every politician wants to be Prime Minister. But I'm quite happy at the moment doing my council work, trying to serve what I perceive as a very great need in Hackney.
Well, I suppose I've done many more things than on previous occasions. But whether I've changed inside, I can't say.
What's the most enjoyable thing in life for you at the moment?
I think it's looking to the future.
So I didn't expect to see you driving, Neil.
Well, neither did I. I mean, if you'd asked me that question a few years ago, I would have been surprised. Well, it was my brother's wife's car, and fortunately she was about to change vehicles at the time, and they let me have it without charge, which was really a very magnanimous gesture.
At 49, Neil has left London, moved to Cumbria in the northwest of England, and become a member of the local district council.
Thank you, Chairman. Fairly simple. It was a committee decision, a majority decision. His own group on the establishment committee agreed with the decision.
Councillor Hughes?
Well, for Councillor Nine's information, Councillor Cook has reconsidered his the opinion he ventured at that meeting.
I'm a Liberal Democrat. I'm standing for the County Council for this seat, which is 400 square miles in size. So it's a huge constituency, and this is only one of the 84 seats.
And who has the seat at the moment?
It's a Conservative councillor at the moment.
Big majority?
Significant. There's a lot of work for me to do. If not this time, maybe next time.
What are the chances this time?
I'm doing my best.
Funnily enough, when I first came up here, I was considering giving it up altogether. But after only about 2 days, after that I just got involved again, so maybe it's impossible to give up politics.
Well, I've a great deal of respect for the Liberal Democrats, but I think that I won't vote for them this time because I'll vote for Mr Maclean, and in particular he's keen on to preserve our way of life in the country, with hunting in particular.
Well, it's going to very disadvantage us because we've changed our farming policy since foot and mouth. We went out to dairy cows.
Well, certainly more people vote. Perhaps they see the impact on their lives more starkly than people do in the city. I found in London, many parts of London, there was a huge apathy because it seemed like they used to say, it doesn't matter who you vote for, the government always gets in.
So, I mean, when I saw you 7 years ago, you seemed content, happy in London. So why the change?
I neither felt that I was satisfying the community around me, nor did I feel I was satisfying myself. And that was obviously not an ideal situation.
At 42, when Neil first arrived in London from the Shetland Islands, he lodged with Bruce.
I've had little contact with Bruce. We've exchanged 1 or 2 letters, but maybe ours was a friendship which flourished, and it was a genuine friendship in the circumstances in which we found ourselves in London.
I think that's what happens in life, that people you're close to, and then circumstances drift you apart, and you find other people, and you wonder now and again what's happening to them, and hope they're all right. But that's what happens in life.
How's your health?
It's probably very good at the moment, and living in this rural setting is obviously healthier than living in the middle of a city. There is less stress. I ended up with a former council flat, which is nothing luxurious, but I was lucky to get it, and as soon as I could see the view out of my window across a stream and trees and the hills in the background, I knew I was in the right place. I know that many people say they feel closer to God in the countryside. I wouldn't want to be simplistic about it, but because one is much closer to natural life, one's therefore much closer to the springs of life.
My Jesus, my Saviour, Lord, there is none like you. Tower of refuge and strength.
Remembering Jim and Anne, and Bruce and Julia, and Doreen as well, and also John.
I was first a lay reader in London.
We pray that
after completing a little more training, I was relicensed by the Bishop of Carlisle.
Nature is lovely, nature is made by God, but it's lovely.
It gives me the peace of mind to accept when things don't go the way they want to. Politics can be a very bruising game.
I will maintain my faith. I will continue to trust in God.
Yes.
I'm absolutely sure that my faith has helped me through these difficult times.
Would you ever see having a career in the church?
While I have a dedication to the church, I haven't experienced what I call a calling into the priesthood or anything of that kind. So the answer is no at the moment.
When I grow up, I want to be an astronaut. But if I can't be an astronaut, I think I'll be a coach driver.
If the state didn't give us any money, it would probably just mean crime. And I'm glad I don't have to steal to keep myself alive.
Neil spends one day a week doing voluntary work for Oxfam.
Bernard, can you tell me why people keep putting non-classical...
I enjoy doing this. It's relaxing. I love books, and I enjoy the company here as well.
John, you can't eat.
I'd much rather have a full-time job where I was being paid, but because of the council work I do, I really want a job in the rest of my time that isn't too stressful.
Well, these are all £6.99 new, so I'm putting them in at £1.99, I think.
I get just over £200 a month allowance for being a councillor. On top of that, I get £9 a week job seekers allowance, and because I'm entitled to the job seekers allowance, I get my housing benefit as well, which pays my rent. I did some teaching of French to young children last year for a while, and that was very useful income while I did it. Well, my father died 5 years ago. I do feel, however, that I'm a little nearer to my mother since then, but both geographically and possibly emotionally. It's never been an easy relationship, and I'm not claiming that everything is healed now, but I feel I can speak to my mother.
And do you miss your dad?
I had a great relationship with my father when I was much younger. My relationship with him did deteriorate as I got older. I sometimes felt that he'd made the wrong decision in advice he'd given me or things he'd done, but then, you know, obviously he had his own life to lead, and just a few months before he died, we went together to a cricket match where we had what I knew would probably be the last long talk we would have, because he was dying at the time then, and I felt that we were both relaxed because we were doing something we enjoyed doing, which was relaxing in the sunshine and watching sport. So I felt that some bridging of the gap did take place that day. No, I've never married, and I don't have a girlfriend at the moment. And it's one of the regrets of my life, actually, that I've not met somebody of the other sex I thought I could have a more permanent relationship with. But I'm probably not the easiest of people to get on with. I did have one girlfriend for close on 2 years, so maybe I'm not as completely hopeless a character as might appear to be the case.
I mean, do you miss a physical side, a sexual side in your life?
Well, I'm a physical person, so I imagine I could be happy in a lasting relationship with somebody, but you have to make do with the reality, and there are many things that might have happened in my life that haven't happened, and there is little point in being regretful and angry about that.
You seem to have such a much stronger sense of purpose to your life than you've had before.
I see that life comes once and it's quite short, and you have to appreciate what's good in it. And if I could just tell us a short story. I was just sunbathing, and a butterfly landed quite close to me with beautiful wings, deep red colours and white sort of circles on them. And I mean, these creatures don't last very long, but it landed very close to me. It didn't seem frightened, and it just seemed to delight in opening and closing its wings and just actually being beautiful for that period of time, enjoying the sunshine. And perhaps there isn't actually any more to life than that, than just being what you are, realising that life goes all around and there are millions of other living creatures who all have to find their part as well.